Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be making this top inspired by the Wild Thoughts video as worn by Rihanna. I'm so excited for this, so let's get to it. So after a bit of research and some sketching, I came up with the design. It will be sheer fabric, have giant arms, be off the shoulder and cropped. Okay, so for this you are going to need scissors, measuring tape, pins, matching thread, elastic thread, inner bobbin, and of course your sheer fabric. Okay, so let's take a few measurements. So to get your main bodice, which is a long rectangle, you will need two measurements. You will need your bust times 1.8 for the long parts, and then you will need your armpit to waist going down for the width. So I put my own measurements here so that you have an idea. My bust is 34 times 1.8, which is 61.2 inches. So that will be the across. And then my armpit to waist is 12 inches and that will be going down. Then you add a 1 inch seam allowance to both sides. For the sleeves, it is the same. You will need to measure around your bicep and times that by 1.8 to get the short side. And then you want to measure from your shoulder all the way to your fingers for the long side. So my measurements were, my bicep was 11.5, which I times by 1.8, which gave me 20.7 for the short bit. And then my shoulder to finger, my middle finger was about 30 inches. So then that was the long part. And then I added 1 inch seam allowance to both measurements again. Okay, so cut out your fabric. You should have one long piece for your main bodice and two pieces for your sleeves. Okay, so before we put everything together, we are gonna hem the long edge on the bodice and the short edges on the sleeves because it's easier to do it now than later. Sewing chiffon or slinky fabric can be quite tricky, so I sew a guideline about 3/8 of an inch and then fold the fabric to that line and stitch again. Then I fold over one more time and stitch a third time, and that seems to do the trick. What you end up with is a nice straight hem, which is not very thick, and that's what we want for sheer fabric. So let's work on the sleeves. From one hemmed edge, measure about 7 or 8 inches in. This should be about the length of your entire hand, and then mark across with some pins. This is where you're going to put your first line of shearing. To make it easier on yourself, you can use a washable marker to then put your lines down so that you can follow these as a guide when it goes through the machine. Once you've made that first line, then make 4 more about 3/8 of an inch apart from each other going upwards. Shearing is when you use an elastic thread to gather your fabric together. To do this, you will need to replace the bobbin in your machine with elastic thread, which you might have to hand wind or you can use your machine. Once you've replaced the bobbin, you can then treat it like you would any normal thread and start sewing your lines. Using the longest stitch available on your machine, put your needle down and then go ahead and sew in a straight line, locking at the beginning and at the end. Keep a firm hand on the fabric, keeping it flat because the fabric will start to pucker up almost immediately, especially because it's so sheer. Once you finish the first line, go ahead and make the other 4. You should end up with this nicely gathered sleeve with a nice long cuff. Now you want to repeat the process with the bodice. Instead of using 8 inches, you're going to use 3, and that should create a nice ruffle. Now we need to switch back to our normal thread so that we can fold over our sleeves right sides together and close, and then do the same with our bodice. Right sides together and then sew down the open edge. To create armholes, lay the bodice as flat as you can with the back seam in the center but on the surface. Cut a quarter circle from the corner of the bodice and it should be about 3 inches in length. Use that cutout as a template for the other side. It's not a super accurate way of getting armholes, but it is an easy way of getting them, and as long as you use the template to cut the other holes, you should be fine. To create the armhole in your sleeves, what you need to do is just fold it on the seamed side and use that same template to cut out that same corner on the side that has been sewn together. All that's left to do is to join the 2 semicircles together, right sides together, starting at one end, then pinning in the middle, and then pinning at the other end. Sew the sleeves on at 5/8 of an inch, and then you should have a nice top, but very open at the shoulders. We're gonna fix that right now. Because we hemmed everything in the beginning, we don't need to worry about that. So all you need to do now is switch out that bobbing for the elastic thread, and then put about 2 or 3 rows of shearing right across that whole shoulder, and you're done. You should end up with a top that looks way too small for you, but I promise you it stretches, and once you put it on, you can get channeling your inner Rihanna and get dancing to wild, wild thoughts. Forgive me for this next bit. I know I'm not Rihanna, but I had fun anyway. Okay, so I look more like a pirate than I do Rihanna, but I had a lot of fun making this. It's quite easy, and I hope you guys enjoy making it too. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!